Well, as Neil just mentioned, perhaps the biggest issue for business next year will be the need to sort out the policy mess still surrounding climate change. Origin Energy Chief Grant King has been at the forefront of business demands that something be done and is a key advisor to the federal government through its business roundtable approach. But he also has plenty of other big and expensive issues on his plate for 2011. Well, Grant King, you're on the business roundtable about climate change, trying to get a consensus in Australia on the subject. But is there any hope of a consensus here if we can't get one internationally? And there doesn't seem to be any sign of something coming out of Cancun at the moment.
As I understand, the Cancun process has just begun, so we need to see what comes out of it, but clearly it's just going to be a step on the way. What really drives us in Origin here in Australia is our domestic context. The domestic context is framed around both sides of government having made a commitment to a 5% reduction on 2000 levels by 2020. And the actions we take and the decisions we make in Origin are really framed in that context, because that does seem to be a very solid bipartisan position that was reaffirmed by both parties during the last election.
But no one seems to be any closer to getting a price on carbon. Do you think that it's possible to achieve a 5% reduction in the time frame agreed without that?
The 5% reduction is actually a very big target. I know there's some debate in the community around it's not ambitious enough, but when you're involved in the industry as we are and we look at what we actually have to do to achieve that, it is a very big target. In achieving that target, our view is, given we're now here in 2010, we're talking about a price that might come into effect in 2012, 13, 14, then it is a challenge to see how price alone will help us achieve that 5% reduction target. So our view is there probably will need to be some complementary measures.
And does it have to be an emissions trading scheme, or is there a bit of a mood towards a carbon tax?
I've been involved in this debate for years, and I've noticed that all of the economists in the world all have their favoured model as to what the best answer is. As a practitioner, a company involved in this every day and working in a traded market like the electricity market, we believe a traded scheme like an ETS in the broad sense is the best way to go for the long term. And I think an important point we'd make is that if you had a choice between the price and the scheme, we'd actually argue to get the scheme right for the long run. A nice, simple, effective scheme that endures in the long run will do more for certainty than will a price today or tomorrow.
And given that the carbon emissions reduction target that everyone, as you say, has agreed on, and other factors that are in place, what sort of increase in the price of electricity do you think we're facing?
I think you've referred earlier to a debate in the community about what's achievable. And at one end of the debate is theoretically what might be required to achieve the entire cuts through a price alone. At the other end is what the community can bear. Our view and our contribution to that debate is not to say the right answer ought to be X. It's to say if you do this, then this will be the consequence. If we would seek to achieve that 5% reduction through price alone by 2020, the price clearly will be higher than might be the case if we chose to implement that and some other measures.
But a lot higher. We're talking a lot, aren't we? I mean, it's like double or triple the price. It's like not just a little bit.
Not for electricity. It's not going to double or triple the price of electricity. There are other factors which are causing increases in electricity prices. And that's why I think you're asking the question, well, what effect would a carbon price have on consumers? In part, the answer would be we should probably pull back some of the other schemes, and therefore the impact may not be as great as we think. And it's quite well documented. There's been schemes in other, New South Wales and in Victoria, which have ultimately been seen to have cost consumers money. And our view is they should all be rationalised if we had a nice, simple, effective, well-designed and enduring scheme.
Now, an energy company like Origin, with all of this going on with carbon emissions reduction and climate change discussion, has a huge challenge to deal with that. And you've got a lot of renewable energy projects on the plate, but you're also raising the bar for yourself by starting up an LNG project in Queensland, and you're looking to bid for New South Wales privatised electricity companies. So, I mean, you get the sense that there's so much going on with Origin. Yeah. How is the company coping, both in a management sense and a capital sense, with all this?
We're more than wise enough to know that not all things occur as may be intended. So we're not a bet on any particular outcome. We do have a lot of options to develop renewable energy, for example. But at the core of our business is a strong gas-based generation business. And we think in any event, society will want to see us decarbonise energy, and that's the path that we're on. But we're on it on the basis that we'll make sensible decisions when the signals are clear to us as to what choices governments and the community wants us to make. We have a broader set of choices than that, and you talked about APLNG and you talked about the New South Wales privatisation. I can't comment a lot on the privatisation process. It's well known that we've certainly made public that we've submitted proposals to the government or bids to the government, but the outcome is unknown.
Is it fair to say that if you succeed, you're going to have a big rights issue?
What we've said publicly is that if we succeed, we would contemplate an equity issue, but we have no immediate need to do it. And that is because, in part, the longer-term capital commitments that the company has also depends on the timing of expenditure on our LNG project. And what we would want to do is firstly know, to the extent that we were successful in the New South Wales process, what's that costing us, how much investment have we made, and then in the context of that, how does that sit with the capital requirements that we'll have for APLNG. So it is quite likely that we will consider an equity issuance, but we have no immediate need to make one. And it's fair to say that in the context of any bid we've made for New South Wales, that bid is fully funded in terms of facilities available to the company.
And when do you expect to have a final investment decision on APLNG in Queensland?
So back in 2008, when we came together with Conoco and formed APLNG, we were targeting December 2010, and it's now December 2010. The two key elements of that timing was all of the regulatory approvals we needed and, of course, contracting a customer. We have now all of the Queensland consents that we need, and we're into the federal process, and we're currently discussing with the relevant departments in the federal government the timing of that federal decision. So I think more relevant now is really where we're up to with customers. What we've said with respect to customers is that we do believe we are still engaged in meaningful negotiations with customers whose requirements can trigger the project. But we've also said quite studiously we weren't going to give running commentary saying we're nearly there, and expressing degrees of nearness isn't all that helpful at the end of the day. So the facts will be the facts. When we announce arrangements with customers, that's the final element that will trigger FID.
And you've also got the Papua New Guinea hydro project, which is another few $1 billion worth of not only that, but also the transmission to get this electricity to Townsville. So is it true to say that these could all happen and none of them could happen?
It's true to say that from a management perspective, we're working on quite a number of very material options that will continue Origin's long record of growth now. So over 11 years, we've grown on average 17% a year at an EPS level. And strategically, that's what we continue to pursue on behalf of our shareholders. So you'd expect us to have a lot of opportunities in front of us, and we do. They will all take a lot of effort to crystallise, and they're all in various degrees, if you like, of progress. The good and the bad thing, and there's many good and bad things about industries, the good and bad thing about our industry is that it takes a long time to do anything. Typically 5 to 10 years is the investment cycle. On the other side, that's plenty of time to schedule the funding and think about the sort of capital we need to do that. We don't have this sort of sudden convergence of a massive capital requirement to develop those projects. So our interest in developing the project in New Guinea, our interests that would take us through to maybe 2017, 2018. So that's plenty of time to think about funding that. And of course, if our LNG project proceeds on the current schedule, it will generate cash flows more than significant to fund that project, almost from cash flow.
Thanks for joining us, Grant King.
Thanks very much for the time.